Office of Employee Safety, and we're here for Safety Break 2024 presentation on working around water. Our presentator today is Heather Johnson from Region 5. She is the safety manager there. We're also excited to have her. She's worked her way up from safety specialist to safety manager. She's awesome. Looking forward to this presentation. This presentation will be about 45 minutes, maybe a little longer, leaving about 10 to 15 minutes for questions. Heather has asked that I monitor the chat for her and keep the questions going at the same time instead of waiting for later. So with that, I welcome everybody. Sit back, relax, and Heather, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking the time out today to attend Working Around Water. I'll give you a little backstory of my history of around working with water is before I came to ODOT, I was a professional river guide for 17 years. So I've definitely seen my fair share of river carnage out there. And after working as a river guide, I started working for ODOT here in the maintenance section on Tollgate, plowing snow. So when you work for a little section, you get pretty siloed. You don't realize how big ODOT is. So I ended up working with one of the bridge crew members in the winter. We were working night shift and I was asking him a little bit about his duties working on the bridge crew. And he said, oh yeah, when we have flooding over here, we'll go out and pull drift. And so a lot of you guys are probably familiar with that. When we have the flooding and the logs and debris build up on the bridge pilings, they'll come in and they'll remove that drift. So I started with my experience of being a river guide. I started asking him a little bit about his training. I'm like, well, you must go through some swiftwater rescue training. And he said, nope. And I said, well, you guys wear a life jacket? And he said, nope. And I said, well, tell me a little about what you guys do. And so, and they were getting out there on those logs and that drift and with chainsaws and a very dangerous situation. So once I got into I went from maintenance into a safety specialist position. That was kind of one of my first priorities is to get the bridge crew some swiftwater training. So I started out with just a PowerPoint I put together, and then that worked into our bridge crew now goes through swiftwater rescue technician training every 3 years. That is through a vendor, and they come over and it's 2 days of training that's been specifically designed for ODOT. And they absolutely love this training. And one of the reasons we send our crews on the east side of the state through this training is because we're very rural over here, and 911 is not their rescue plan. They've got to make quick decisions. They've got to be educated on the water hazards and the features that they're dealing with. They're at times maybe going to have to rescue each other, but they also need to know how to rescue themselves. So that was really great training for them, as well as the equipment. So now I'm going to show you guys a picture of the crew. Okay, so this now is, you guys can see this is the bridge crew. These are the helmets that are certified to be a Swiftwater helmet. They're the pretzel helmet that's in the storeroom. So they're wearing these helmets, and then they have a Swiftwater jacket, they have a knife, and they have a throw bag. They also have the knowledge, the education to save themselves if they find themselves in the river. And I'm going to unshare and show you one more picture. And you can see right here, this is 2 days of training, pretty intense. We're doing a lot of ropes, tying ropes, improvising, because you can see we have to do it sometime in the warmer weather, so the water's not super swift, but these guys don't have dry suits or wet suits, so we opt to do that. Then we've got a lot of throw bag exercises, because throw bagging is a skill. It's not one of those things you can just throw and hit a strike. So we practice that, and then these guys will practice that before the season hits too. We didn't have a lot of flooding this year. I don't anticipate a lot of flooding this year. Okay. So that's a little bit of my history, you guys. I've been a Swiftwater rescue technician since 1993. So I felt that this is really important. This again is just a PowerPoint that I put together for the Oregon Department of Transportation, that's kind of more geared towards us and our policy and our OSHA rules that we have to abide by. So I'm going to go ahead, and I do have a couple videos in here, so I'll make sure I've got my sound. Okay, and again, if you guys have questions, I would like that question right at that time so that we can move on, because there's a lot of terminology and information in this training. So I want to make sure that you guys understand right away. So Linda's going to manage that chat room. Linda just can interrupt, because I'll just be spewing out information, Linda, and just interrupt me when there's a question, and we'll get that question answered.
Perfect, Heather. I'll be happy to do that for you.
Okay, so one thing I want to make sure is that you can see the PowerPoint.
Yes, we can. You want to go to, here we go.
Yep, and we go from beginning. So now I can't see you guys. So because I've got both screens. So here we got working around water, Oregon Department of Transportation. Okay, so I'm sure some of you guys out there, especially the folks that are working on the coast, have probably seen this sort of road washout. Okay, so that's where we've probably had a culvert failure. So in this training, there we go. Okay, so in this training, here's a little objective, is that our employees can identify water hazards and have some basic techniques to allow themselves self-rescue or bank-based rescue for others, and recognize the need for additional help. So there's some terminology. I'm sure a lot of you guys, especially on the west side, have seen what is considered low head dam effect, or also called a weir. These are drowning machines. These are very dangerous. We have a few of them over here in Eastern Oregon as well. So our objectives, training. Okay, so that's really a huge component of this. And I know all you guys know that, is that, that's where the knowledge comes from, is from the training. We have best practices. We have hydrology and water hazards. We have our PPE, our equipment that we use. We're going to pre-plan, and then we're going to do a JHA, or also a high-risk assessment, especially when we have, we've had some major flooding over here in 2019. We had the Umatilla flooding. So we lost a lot of roads in that one. Okay, so this is Rescue 3 International, and they also offer additional training. You guys can see this. You've got industry and government training. So all the way, and a lot of this training ended up being formed from Hurricane Katrina, and the amount of river rescues they had to participate in, either by ground, by water, or by helicopter, to rescue those folks that were stranded in those waters. So you can see a lot of, there's additional training out there with certifications. Then you've got a lot of just kind of basic courses as well. And so you can see Swiftwater Rescue Technician. This is the level that our bridge crew is certified at. All right, so we've got some ODOT best practices. So we've got the blue book. You can take a look at that, and just a habitat guide, best management practices, stormwater management, culvert and inlet cleaning. So that's a lot of times our crews are, if it's flooding, they're going out in the middle of the night, sometimes alone, checking culverts. So our crews over here also, each crew has 2 PFDs. So we don't require them, because it is not, it's kind of industry standard that you wear a PFD if you're within the warm zone. So you've got 3 different zones. So you've got the cold zone, which is your shore-based. If you're within 5 feet of the river, that's the warm zone. If you're in the river, that is the hot zone. And so we do not want our employees in the river. We do not want them in the hot zone. But if they're 10 feet from the river, that's considered the warm zone. And so industry standard would be, at the minimum, PFD, okay, personal flotation device, also known as a life jacket. And then also a knife, a helmet, and a throw bag. And then knowledge, some training. So culverts, inlets, and outlets can be very dangerous when they're plugged. We've got also bridge maintenance, have drift removal, bridge cleaning, water withdrawals. We've got fish habitats, so our environmental crews are out there shocking fish. They're in the river quite a bit. And also emergency maintenance. So you can see our PPE standard, and you'll see in this another slide here, is kind of what is required for ODOT and a life jacket or PFD in our PPE standard. I just want to, since I have a captive audience here, is really PPE is your last line of defense. So it's very important that we eliminate the hazard if possible. So we don't want to put our folks into the hazard, or we can eliminate it. Okay, we're going to substitute it. If possible, replace the hazard. We can do some engineering controls, administrative controls, and PPE again is going to be your last line of defense. So in our PPE policy, you can see flotation device, PFD, working over, near, or in water. And this is an OSHA rule, Oregon Administrative Rule, that workers in boats are underway must wear a Coast Guard approved or equivalent wearable flotation device. So I know we have one boat over here in Eastern Oregon. It's based out of Ontario because of the Snake River. So our bridge crew all wear a PFD when they're in that boat. But I find this upper part pretty interesting. These rules apply where the danger of drowning exists and the water is more than 5 feet deep. Well, I'm 5'3", so I'm probably going to be in trouble. All right. So again, we don't want to hamstring anybody, but we just want to give folks knowledge that, hey, you do have a PFD available. And at least if you fall in the river, okay, swift moving water, at least you've got a fighting chance. If you have no PFD on, you're probably not going to make it in that swift moving water. You're talking about cold shock, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But 90% of all drownings happen without a PFD on. So that's how important they are. So if you guys want to look that up, that's all on the Office of Employee website under our PPE policy. But you guys on the west side, you're dealing with piers, docks, wharfs, and work sites along developed shorelines. So you can see you must have a rescue device available within 200 feet of the water or the shoreline work area. And our rivers that we're dealing over here with are swift, more smaller rivers. We've got the John Day, the Grand Ronde, Umatilla. The Snake is a little bit bigger down in Ontario, but you guys are dealing with the Willamette. You've got the Columbia, then you've got those other smaller rivers, more swift moving, creek-like rivers. So the McKenzie, the Rogue, the Umpqua. So quite a few rivers out there. So a little different. Okay, we'll go on to swift water involves water over 2 feet deep. So that's kind of where I'm gearing towards, is more swift moving water. So you've got the Columbia and the Willamette, it's very deceptive rivers. They're large, they've got big boils, and a lot of people drown in those rivers every year because they'll go in and that water will catch them off guard. So I'm talking about more swift moving water over 2 feet deep that is flowing at a rate greater than 1 knot. That's 1.15 miles per hour, and occurring in a natural water course, flood control channel, or a flood related environment. So if you throw it, if you're trying to figure out if that is a swift moving river, if you throw a stick in that water and it's floating down the river and you're walking along the bank at a swift pace and that stick is moving faster than you, that's considered swift moving water. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the powerful force of water. So I'm sure some of you guys out there know that 1 cubic foot of water weighs 62.4 pounds. So a gallon is 8 pounds. The measurement of 1 cubic foot of water per second, CFS, moving past a given point equates to 449 gallons per minute. We're talking fresh water too. So let's think about flood water. So when you've got flood water, you have a lot of debris within that water. So it's going to weigh even more. You're going to have mud. You're going to have logs. You're going to have suspended loads. You're going to have washing machines, cars, pesticide barrels. You're going to have a tremendous amount of hazardous material that is in that water. And so that's going to make that water heavier. So you can see fresh water moving at only 4 miles an hour, a brisk walk pace, exerts a force of 66 pounds on each square foot of anything it encounters. It doesn't care who it is. Double the speed to 8, and the force skyrockets to 264 pounds per square foot. That's enough force to easily push a car or light truck off a flooded road if the water is up to the door level. The force of water obeys a square law, and this means that if the water speed doubles, the force increases up to 4 times. So I've got a little story about our manager in Baker. This was quite a few years ago. He was checking some flooding down on the Powder River outside of Baker, and he drove onto a flooded road, which was not there anymore. So the ODOT pickup was floating down the river with the manager, and he was able to get on top of the pickup, and he was rescued. So you guys just make sure your crews know that, you know, just because you see a flooded road doesn't necessarily mean that that road is still intact underneath that.
Heather, we have a
Yes.
question in the chat from
Okay.
Daniel. It says, regarding the OSHA rule, what constitutes a developed shoreline?
Boy, I would have to look into that, Daniel. To be honest, I would almost say that it would be something like a wharf, a dock, something that was humanly developed versus a natural shoreline.
And that's what Robert Schneider, Office of Employee Safety Manager, also says. He commented, my understanding it's docks, wharfs, and piers, which also sounds like man-made items.
Yes. And
Thank
typically,
you.
like, yeah, it typically, like, if you guys are going to I'm trying to think, I've been over there. Uh, what there's a couple docks, I don't know, St. John's area, that typically you will see that there will be a throwable device somewhere on those docks. Our bridge crew also has a throwable device, and they're kind of opting out of the big buoy ring, and they're going for the throw bag. All right, let's see. Number one priority is ourselves. We teach that all the time. Okay, we are number one. We want to make sure we all go home at the end of the night. High water and structures provide a good recipe for a very dangerous situation. All right, then we've got, again, just hydrology and water hazards. So we've talked about that in that first slide. So 1 gallon of water weighs 8.2 pounds. So that's a lot of force on your body if you are stuck in a strainer, or you've got a foot entrapment, you've fallen in the water and you can't get out. You've got a tremendous amount of force on you. It doesn't matter how many times you've been to the gym and you're maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger and you're super strong. That water is more powerful than you. And water always, it has to be respected, because it doesn't discriminate and it takes care of people's egos really quickly. So water needs to have full respect. Okay, we're going to go into some Swiftwater terminology for you guys. So downriver is the direction the water is traveling down. Upriver, the direction the water is coming from. River right is always as you're in the river and you're looking downriver. River right is always on the right. River left is always on the left. And this next slide you will see. So it doesn't matter what perspective, if you're looking upriver or downriver, river right is always on the right and river left is always on the left. And that is critical if you're in a situation where you need, well, either if you're just doing work and you're communicating, hey, go over to river right, and we're going to pull drift from there, river left, or if you're in a rescue situation, you need to be talking the same terminology. And here I have a video. If whoever's out there, tell me at the end of this video where you think this is in the state of Oregon.
Including Brent Union, Humboldt Elementary, and Seneca schools. Also, Brent County Sheriff Glenn Palmer is asking people who do not live in specific or general areas of where flooding is taking place to stay out of or away from these areas. Traffic and congestion can have delays and the potential for accidents. That's been a quick look at our Eastern Oregon news headlines. To stay up with the flooding emergency, make sure you log on to myeasternoregon.com. Also, follow breaking news.
All right, anybody out there have any idea what that location of this flooded river? So this is
Nothing in the chat, Heather.
What's that? Do you have a chat?
Nothing's in the chat.
Okay, so this is Picture Gorge. And so this is Highway 26. So outside of Mount Vernon on the way to John Day, or you go to Spray. This typically is a very, very small stream of water. And we had some massive flooding in 2017. So you can see, is there a road there? I don't know. So this is before ODOT was able to get in and close that road down, because what's happening is you can have some undercutting of the water is undercutting that road. And so you may not have a road there and you could have somebody fall in. Again, that's really swift moving water. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about what a river looks like here. So you got the laminal flow, okay, which is the middle of the river. That's the fastest water in the middle. And then you guys can see it gets a little bit slower. Then on the sides of the river, you got the helical flow, and you can see it's bouncing off the shoreline and twisting. So those, if you find yourself in the river, okay, you're in some white water, you're going to stay in the middle of the river in the fast moving water. As soon as you can find a safe place to get out, you're looking for that helical flow, and that's going to catch you and get you back into shore. You want to get out of that water as soon as possible. Just you've got to be able to identify a safe location to get out. Kind of a corkscrew flow on the sides. And a great place to get out is going to be an eddy. So you can see this guy right here. You've got an obstacle in the water. Water goes around the obstacle, either a bridge pillar, a rock, whatever it may be, and it creates a backflow to fill in, and that's an eddy. So you can have eddies on the sides of the rivers created by the shore. Those are safe locations to get out. You can try to catch an eddy behind a rock and just kind of get your mind right too, because you're in some swift moving water and it's cold. So if you can kind of slow down and get your mind right, you can make some good decisions on how you're going to rescue yourself. And if you guys are fishermen out there, you know that fish like to hang out behind these rocks, because they're making their runs up the river, and then they'll get in behind the eddies to take a break. All right, as you're floating down the river, okay, so we've got a little raft picture there. You can see the arrow, you're going down the river. All right, if you have a smiling hole, and so a hole is what I mean is a hydraulic hole, it's going over an obstacle. More than likely it's a rock or maybe even a log under the river. It goes up and over and creates a big void, and then it comes back and fills itself back in. If it is smiling at you as you're going down the river, that's good, because if you get into that hole, it's going to push you out to the sides, and then you'll be floating down the river. If you get into a frowning hole, which you can see on the top, you go into the middle of that hole and it will sit there and it will recirculate you. Okay, so you can surf, like kayakers love these holes because they can sit there and they can surf in these holes over and over. But if you're outside of your kayak and you're in a boat and you're in your life jacket, you're going to sit there and you're going to surf. And whitewater is about 60% air, so your life jacket sometimes floats you and sometimes doesn't. So you're having a difficult time regulating your breathing if you're stuck in a frowning hole. So here's an example of the eddy. You got still water, you got your boulder here. Okay, you've got more water coming over the hump. Okay, creating the eddy. That's a safe place to be. Okay, this is considered a pillow, so it's just kind of pushing off there, and it'll push you off too. You'll come up here and you'll push off and hopefully catch that eddy. And then you've got a standing wave, come up and over, and then you've got that hydraulic hole, which can be either a frowning hole or a smiling hole, and that's where you can get caught in. But here is the most dangerous thing that we're looking at, which is a low head dam. So this is a man-made feature, and you see a lot of these in the Midwest. They're considered the drowning machine. You can see the next picture I'm going to show you, though, is a natural low head dam. But what I do want to show you, if you end up in a low head dam for some reason, you can see you're going to sit here and you're going to recirculate and recirculate. So if you can try to get into a ball and dive to the bottom, you're going to try to catch that current down low and it'll push you up and out. because you're just going to sit there inside of that aerated water. Okay, this picture here is of the Umatilla River. You can see there's a log here and a log spanning the river. And so you can see how symmetrical this is. So this is considered a low head dam effect. And so if we had a bridge worker that fell into the river, was floating down, there's a pretty good chance he would sit there and recirculate in there. So those are the kind of features you want to identify before you go out, is have our crews go downriver, upriver, go, okay, we've got a low head dam there, we've got a strainer here. You know, what are we working with? Just take a few, 5 minutes just to identify some of the hazards and then put a plan in place before you go and do your work. Okay, I've got, I believe this is about an 8-minute video, and it really talks about the low head dam effect.
Now on KCCI News Channel 8.
Team coverage tonight of the incredible river rescue that took a team effort. Hear from the man who earned himself the title Hero. Plus, see what makes these low-head dams so dangerous.
This is KCCI News Channel 8, Iowa's news leader.
I just told her, hang on tight, and I won't let go.
A woman is alive tonight thanks to the heroic efforts of a quick-thinking construction worker and his crew. The incredible river rescue all caught on tape.
Now, it all started with 2 boaters who were in trouble on the Des Moines River, but only one could be saved.
The woman was rescued at the Center Street Dam right across from the Iowa Event Center. The other boater's body was recovered downstream near the MLK Bridge. We have Team 8 coverage of this heart-racing rescue. Katie Ward starts us off live.
Kevin and Stacy, the woman was rescued right here from inside the boil of the dam, and if you look really closely, you can still see life jackets floating in the water. The fire department's wet team spent more than 30 minutes trying to rescue her, but the currents were just too strong, and then a construction worker stepped in.
For 30 minutes, that current tossed and turned a woman inside the boil of the dam. When the wet team couldn't reach her, a nearby construction crew lent a hand. Jason Oglesby suspended himself from a crane while a co-worker lowered him to the water. He was able to grab a hold of the woman.
She is very fortunate, yep.
Oglesby hung on tight while the crane operator carefully moved the 2. The wet team was waiting nearby, and Oglesby brought her to safety.
Saved him. He's a hero. He is. I got goosebumps. It's awesome. You only see this stuff on TV, not in real life, not like this.
A crane operator probably was the best thing to do, yep. She was wore down when we were attempting to get her out. They kept on sucking her back and forth under the water.
But the other passenger in the boat, a 60-year-old man, wasn't as fortunate.
One of the people had made it through the boil, was face down in the water.
Captain Steve Brown said crews tried several times unsuccessfully to rescue the man. The wet team pulled his body to shore near Martin Luther King Parkway. The fire department still doesn't know what caused the boat to crash and the 2 to go overboard. But Captain Brown says the woman is lucky to be alive. And it's all thanks to one courageous act.
You could be stuck for days in a boil. Our crews are trained to work around that boil to try and get people out, but it's a real hard procedure to do.
Now, the woman was taken to Mercy. I just checked. She's in stable condition. No names obviously are being released pending family notification. Emily Price talked to the man who rescued her. He has quite a story to tell. Because they happened to be here building this pedestrian bridge behind me. That crane right there happened to be here waiting. Because of that and those quick-thinking workers, it turned out to be the only thing that could save her.
I'm thinking she's going to die. That's what I'm thinking.
From the moment it started, the Kramer construction crew built a plan.
Trying to throw her ropes and life preservers and stuff, and she kept going under.
The first attempts only made things worse.
We did hurry. We hurried as fast as we could.
A cord from the bridge only reached to the boil, and every time she tried to grab it, powerful currents sucked her back in.
You don't get out of there soon, she's going to die.
Jason Oglesby watches her go under several times trying to grasp the line. Her head just inches from the violent boil. The rope would be close, but not close enough. A full 20 minutes later, a water rescue boat appears with a second lifeline. But again, the attempted rescue only makes things worse.
The small boat is no match to the powerful flow that's trapped her.
The boil's trying to pull them in, they can pull them out.
With options and time running out, their heads turn to the crane.
I just happen to have my harness on, see?
It was a quick decision.
Joe Lowe jumps in the crane while Jason latches on. While the woman churns helplessly, still stuck in the forceful water, Joe moves Jason over the dam.
Well, I didn't want to get Jason under the water, but I wanted to get him. I knew I had to get his feet in it.
After several tries,
I just told her, hang on tight, I won't let go.
Jason finally connects, something several ropes and even a wet team couldn't do.
She was just in shock. Said something about her hands. She couldn't feel her hands. The crane drug her to the boat, and the boat hauled her away.
Then I just boomed Jason back up on the levee.
And Jason and the crew go right back to work. The men who build bridges constructed a plan that saved a life.
And hopefully never again.
The whole crew did it. It wasn't me, it was the whole crew.
Back here live at the Center Street Dam, Joe Lowe, the crane operator, actually watched the boat go over the dam to begin with. And at that time, he heard the man yell to the woman to put her life jacket on. You can see several of the life jackets that were thrown to her still out there tonight near this boil. That is what kept her above water for so long. We're told that man was not able to get a life jacket back on.
A scary and frantic situation. Emily, was Jason able to talk to the woman at all?
Well, he wasn't able to talk to her very much. The entire conversation just consisted of her saying, I can't feel my hands very well. And that was essentially all the talking that they did before she was taken away.
Emily Price and Katie Ward, thank you.
You know, for years, the Iowa Whitewater Coalition has been trying to get the word out about the dangers of low-head dams. This video from back in 2006 is a simulation of what happens when the water flows over one of these low dams. It's called the drowning machine. Water over a dam creates a washing machine-like effect, making it difficult for anything to continue downstream. Coalition officials consistently say that a lot of boaters think that they can just go over the dam like a waterfall, but that's not the way these things work. The dams are so powerful, as you saw there. They trap you, suck you right under. Wrapping up tonight's top story, the woman rescued from the river was conscious and breathing at the time. She is being treated at Mercy Medical Center. No names have been released. The other boater.
Okay, everybody there still?
Yes, we are.
Yes. Okay. Okay, good. I thought that was one of the best videos that I could find. It was a little grainy and old, but it just gives you guys an idea of how dangerous these dams are. So we've got a low-head dam, several of them here in Eastern Oregon. This particular one right here, you guys wouldn't know where this was unless you're from Eastern Oregon, but this is up Catherine Creek. And you can see these step downs, each where this boil line is here, that's 6 feet deep, which is very deceiving. And so you had a lot of kids and people that were swimming in this area. And that this was, I would have to say probably 2009. A 9-year-old girl got stuck in there. Her mom went in to rescue her and they both drowned. So that's just be heads up on the low head dam effects. I think it's been totally fenced off since then. Okay, so going more into some river terminology here, you've got the current vector, and you can see it's a lot like geometry. It's bouncing off the shorelines. If you have a dog that swims, or if you've watched ducks that swim, they swim at a 45-degree angle to that vector line. It's called a ferry angle. And so that's going to get you, instead of just swimming straight down the river, if you see a safe place to get out, you get a 45-degree angle to the river, either upriver or downriver, and you can swim to your safe spot. But what you'll also see is that you can get a lot of debris that collects at these corners, and those are called strainers. And I've got another picture of that, but we'll go into one of the most dangerous things that probably kills most people that even have a life jacket on is foot entrapment. So it's real important that if you find yourself in the river, you never stand up. You want to get into the downriver position, which is on your back with your feet up. and using your arms to swim in a defensive manner, and your head's up and you're looking around, looking for those eddies, looking for those safe places you can get out of the river. If you try to stand up, you can see in that lower picture, your foot goes in, gets lodged into one of those rocks, and the only way that that foot is going to come out is it needs to come back out the same way it came in, or possibly it's going to break, and then the foot might break and be able to come out that way. So the only way to help someone that is in a foot entrapment is you're going to have to throw a line across the river, get somebody else across the river, however that may be, and you're going to try to get a line across them and hold their body up and try to pull them up and out of there. But remember the power of water. Okay, you got a lot of force against that body. And here's a good example of a strainer. Okay, so you can see it's like an iceberg. All right, you just see a few branches up here, but you can see down below all the debris. So if you're floating down the river, okay, you can get caught in that debris, and it strains all the water through except for the debris and your body. So even with a life jacket on, you can get sucked underneath here, and that's your coffin. Here's an example of the flooding the Umatilla River. This is a classic example of a strainer. Let's say we had some workers upriver. One of them fell in. They're floating down. If they get caught underneath here, that's where they're going to stay. So you are going to aggressively swim. If you cannot avoid this, you're going to aggressively swim head first forward as fast as you can so you can get on top of that strainer. Don't let anything suck you underneath there. And here's an example of that. You can see you want to get up and over the strainer. Up and over, hang on, okay? Because if you get sucked into it, that's where you'll stay. A lot of river raptors die in strainers every year. And here's an example. This is our Region 5 bridge crew. And they've got a lot of logs and debris, and they're in the water, but they've got their PFD on, and they've upgraded their PFDs since this picture to rescue PFDs. And they've got their Synetics, and now they've got, instead of just a hard hat, they've got the safety helmet. Culvert openings, very dangerous. Okay, either at the exit of the culvert where that big debris can blow out all of a sudden, and now you're caught in it, or if you get sucked into that culvert, this is what it looks like. So you're not going anywhere here. Then we've got some heavy waters up at Mount Rainier National Park. I'm sure some of you guys have seen that. You can just see all the water flowing down, all the debris going, you know, trying to make it through that culvert. That's the importance of why we keep our culverts clear. But if one of our workers was to fall into this cold, swift moving water, one of the issues, the threats that they have is called cold shock. So you've got 3 threats. You've got a loss of your breathing control, your heart and blood pressure, you have problems there, and you have impaired mental ability. And so what you have is cold shock. It's actually a reflex. So you lose your gag reflex, your heart will go into tachycardia, so it's beating about 240 beats a minute, and you're gasping. That reflex happens for about 3 to 5 minutes. If you can get through the 3 to 5 minutes and regulate your breathing, you're not going to die from hypothermia for about a half hour. So you've got to get through that gasping and get through there. A lot of times what people will do if they don't have a PFD on and they go into that cold water is they will make that gasp under the water, and that's sudden drowning. And it used to be called disappearance syndrome. It's where you had a canoe out on a lake and there's no one around, nobody saw them drown. Well, they hit that, fell into the water, they gasped, and they went straight down to the bottom. So try to regulate your breathing if you find yourself in that cold moving water. A PFD is going to help you. Okay, again, flood debris, we talked a little bit about this. When we've got flood debris, you've got a lot of different chemicals in there. We've got just a lot of suspended, dirt. We've got, I guess a good saying is what lies at the bottom of the river is death. Because you've got cars, you've got washing machines, you've got rebar, you've got concrete, got a lot of different things that can entrap you under there. That's the importance if you find yourself in the river that you stay in that downriver position that's floating on your back. And the reason why you're floating on your back is so you can see where you're going, feet up. You can push off of anything with your feet instead of your head. And then once you find a safe spot to get out, then that's where you'll go into a offensive swim and get yourself out of the river as soon as possible. And this is a
Wow.
that was the Umatilla flooding as well. That was our bridge crew manager at the time, Rich Lanny, filming that. So I find this pretty interesting. This is the Arizona Stupid Motorist Law. And so they put this law in effect because they have a lot of flash flooding down there where people decide they want to try to cross this road, and then they get into the river, and the vehicle's floating down the river, and either they drowned or they have to be rescued. So the Arizona Stupid Motorist Law means if the road is closed and you choose to try to cross the road and you need emergency assistance, is that you will be charged for that rescue service. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about life jackets, and there was kind of a trend there for a while. They didn't want to call it a life jacket, so they called it a PFD, personal flotation device, and now they're kind of going back like it's okay. So those two, life jackets and PFDs, are interchangeable, and these are all Coast Guard classified life jackets. This is a self-inflating PFD. Our environmental crews were wearing these for quite a while, but they have also gone to the rescue jacket as well. This is really the ultimate, just super basic jacket. This is the PFD. This is what everybody should be wearing within 10 feet of the swift moving water, the hazard zone. Again, that's industry standard. It's not an OSHA rule. You want to have at least 22 pounds of flotation. Typically in these jackets, you have more flotation in the front of the jacket than you do in the back, and that way that it's going to right you so your head is up. You'll also see jackets that have pillows on the back that will support the head. And this is what our crews in Region 5, each crew has either 2 to 4, depending on how many people are on the crew. And this is an ANSI 2 PFD that they have available to them. We're going to talk a little bit about swiftwater swimming. So you've got either an offensive swim or a defensive swim. And if you find yourself in the river, you're going to be fighting for your life because you're dealing with cold, swift moving water. You've got to be able to control your breathing. And again, look for those safe areas. Get yourself out of that water as soon as possible. I'll show you here. Here's the defensive swim. That is the downriver position. Feet are up. You can think a good little thing to think about when you're in the river is nose and toes. Nose is up, toes are up, nose and toes. And you're going down, you're staying in the middle of the river, the fast moving water. You've identified where you know where a strainer is. You're avoiding the strainers. You know where the low head dams are. You're avoiding that. You may be coming up to a low head dam. So now you're going to aggressively swim and get out. You do not want to go into that low head dam. And you can see these guys right here, they've got the ferry angle. Okay, so they're just swimming left or right and getting themselves out of the river. And if you have to, your last resort is to do an offensive swim. Okay, you were aggressively either swimming downriver or upriver, and you're trying to catch an eddy. You're trying to find any way to get out of the river. And this is our bridge crew. This is in Pendleton, them pulling drift, just so you guys have an idea of what these guys do. I did look at the time, so I'm gonna keep moving on. You got an idea of some of the tasks that they do. Okay, when we're talking about water rescue, so if we've got our crews out there and someone falls in the river, we're talking about 911 is not your rescue plan. You're gonna call 911 immediately. Another thing is identify what your local fire departments are trained in. I know that over in Eastern Oregon, our fire departments are mostly rural and volunteer, and they don't have the equipment. So we do have 2 search and rescue teams that are Swiftwater Rescue Technician certified, and they have boats, but you're looking at 2 hours for them to mobilize and respond. So if you have an employee that is in the river, okay, we're talking about now a river rescue, and it's very low frequency, but it is a high risk endeavor. And I did look up some stats on DOT workers, and there has been quite a few drownings. A lot of them were actually equipment that went into the river. So high risk endeavor. So have a plan in place. And when we go from low risk to high risk, we're going to talk, reach, throw, helicopter, row, or go. So we as ODOT workers we're only going to talk, reach, throw. We can call a helicopter. We are not going to row, and we are not going to go. You need to be trained if you're going to go into the river for the river rescue. So talking, that's pretty straightforward. Hey, Joe, swim to river left, swim to river left. Okay, you're talking them through that. Regulate your breathing. All right, you're going to try to reach them. Whatever you've got, you got a branch, you got a ladder, you got a pike pole, whatever you have, try to reach them. You could reach your, if they're pretty close to the shore, you could reach your arm out, you could reach your leg out. Just make sure you don't become one of the people in the water. Okay, because you're number one. We don't want to have a situation where now you've got 2 people to be rescued. Okay, throw bags. Our bridge crews are carrying a throw bag just like this. That's something they practice, and so there's usually 50 to 75 feet of rope that is in there. That's a great way to have somebody grab that rope and you can pull them in. Remember to throw, don't go unless you are trained in water rescue. Untrained rescuers easily become a second victim. Okay, throw them whatever you can find. Now, it used to be back in the day, helo was at the top where that was your last resort. But now they have changed this where they're like, we've got so many helicopters. That's the way to go. Just call a helicopter in. They'll come in and pluck those people out. Okay, especially if they're stranded in the middle of the river. So helicopters are an option. Okay, rowing a watercraft if you had it. Okay, so that's something you guys aren't trained in. And then going, again, our bridge crew is trained to go. So if they had a fellow employee that was in the water, what we call dope on the rope. They end up hooking up their rescue life jacket to a rope, and they can go out there and swim, grab the victim, and they get pulled back in. If they get in trouble, that rescue jacket has a release, and so they're able to release themselves from that, but you never hardline yourself to anything unless you have a release. So that's where that training comes in. If you're going to get a rescue life jacket, it's very important to go through the training as well. A couple hand signals out there is distress, because when you're in a whitewater situation, it's very difficult to hear. So if you're okay, you just tap the top of your head, I'm okay, or you can create a circle with both your arms. If you need to move or swim, 2 hands up and then point to where you're going. Always point to positive. Okay, hey, go that way. Don't point to the Low Head Dam. So make sure you guys know you're on the same page for your communications. Eddy out, 2 hands above, and wave then point. Or a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just swirl my finger around in the air. That means eddy out. Both arms across the chest is I need help. Okay, hazard assessment considerations, just the physical features, if you're dealing with bridges, low head dams, strainers, specific hazards, predetermine the rescue site, egress route and staging area. Do a high risk assessment. There's some really great questions on there, and also a job hazard analysis. And if we are in a situation with the rescue, okay, here's what I think we face. We've got an employee in the river. Here's what I think we should do. Here's why. Here's what we should keep our eye on. And now let's talk. Let's get on the same page, because seconds are counting here. We've got to make a decision on what to do. Maybe the decision is to do nothing. Okay, but a decision needs to be made. So the important thing is that you train, you recognize the water hazards, you have the PPE in place, you pre-plan, you do your risk assessment, JHA. Here's the references that I have from the PowerPoint I pulled together. And this again is our bridge crew, Region 5 bridge crew. And you can see he's in a basket with, they have their life jackets on. And so again, they now have the rescue jacket and a different helmet, so you can see what they're dealing with. Okay, so I'm going to escape and share. Okay, so I do want to show, you can see me now. This is a great little book. If anybody's interested, this is a book that we give to our bridge crews and also our environmental techs. It's just a basic swiftwater rescue field guide. And so they know quite a few knots. They know how to improvise a harness with a piece of webbing. So they're pretty highly trained in that. It sounds like maybe ODOT's got a training called Man Overboard, and I'm looking into that, but that might be something you guys are interested in as well. And I guess that's it. If there's any questions, we're looking pretty good on time. I hope that everybody got a little bit of something, actually, for your personal life too. If you guys are boaters or floaters, and hopefully you learned how to recognize some river hazards out there.
Absolutely. We thank you so very much, Heather, for this presentation. It was awesome. I am myself a kayaker, and I have learned so much. There's not a lot around kayaking. That you can buy your stuff, get you're supposed to have some personal floating devices, but none of this training. My husband actually has a boating license, so we get a little bit more from that, but I learned a lot today. I'm going to have you unmic yourself if you want to ask a question of Heather. Now is the time. I don't see anything in the chat except for lots of kudos and thank yous. Very, very great, Heather. Heather and I will stick around till 9 o'clock. If anybody has any presentations. Otherwise, we thank you very much for this. This is our last presentation for Safety Break 2024. The Wellness Committee will have more presentations throughout the year. But again, our thanks goes out to Heather and everyone that participated in all the other presentations this month. We wish you all a happy safety break and safe water rescue, safe water use. How about that?
Yeah, hopefully not rescue, that you recognize the hazard. You don't put yourself in that situation so that you have to be rescued. So, and I know that in that Portland area, the Sandy River takes a lot of people.
It does.
Because you'll get that hot weather in Portland all of a sudden, and people are, consuming alcohol, and they go in that water, even though it's not white water, it's bigger river, and it's swift with boils, and those boils will pull you down. And Tim's got his hand raised.
Hey, Heather, is the training that you guys got available statewide, and what's the cost on it?
So we go through, it's a company called Oregon Rescue. They're based out of Bend. His name is Travis Reed, and he comes over every 3 years, because that's the certification, is every 3 years. And he does a little bit of a condensed course, because typically he trains either military, fire departments that have boat, and they're more geared for rescue. And so he's been able to condense our ODOT training into 2 days, and it's really just about self-rescue and identifying the hazard, and then what kind of equipment we've got to work with. And it's $450 per person.
Right.
And that is a certification that they can take and go anywhere with. If they want to become a river guide, they can take that certification and work on the weekends as a river guide because they've got that. So yeah,
Gotcha.
Travis Reed, Oregon Rescue, outstanding instructor.
Great. Thank you. And a really nice job, by the way, too. Great
Yes.
presentation.
Yeah, this is just again the tip of the iceberg. So it's just an awareness of, because where's all of our roads? Most of our roads are right next to a river.
Rivers
Or
and
water.
oceans and yeah.
And oceans, yeah, and that's a whole nother deal. Ugh.
Yeah. Any other questions for Heather?
Right, well, thank you, Linda, for managing the chat line. I appreciate that.
Problem. I'm going to go ahead and turn off recording right now. If anybody does have any questions in the future, feel free to email myself or Heather. We're both on the WIN in ODOT, and we'd be happy to respond to any questions you have.
I'd like
I don't know how we get the stupid driver law in Oregon. That's what
Yeah.
I want to know.
Yeah, definitely. So I am reading a few. Robert Snyder, the rule is a bit lacking, and I agree with Robert 100%. So it's OSHA rule, I think it's 1926.106. I'm not exactly sure, but working around water, I agree that industry standard again is if you're within that warm zone that you have a PFD on around swift moving water.
Hey, they do have that letter that's out there for construction activities too, that talks about if you're in a crane over the water, about fall protection and that versus PFD and all that goes with that.
So when you're working over the water and you have to, do a high risk assessment. Okay, what's going to kill me? Is the fall going to kill me, or is me falling in the river and drowning going to kill me? And so you have to make that decision. And most of the time it's going to be the fall. So they're not going to be able to wear their PFD with their fall protection, their harness on. And so they're going to make that choice, and they're going to choose to wear the fall protection over the PFD. But hopefully they have something in place where they have, some sort of downriver spotter, or downriver safety, maybe upriver safety, just to, hey, there's a big log coming down the river. And so they can communicate that. Or if someone does fall in, they've got a situation where they can throw a throw bag to them. So you've got an upriver safety and a downriver safety, especially if someone doesn't. But if they've got the fall protection and it works correctly, you're going to analyze like what's the distance of the fall, and they're not going to go into the river.
Yeah, it's interesting the number of state agencies that actually work in and on and around the water. So Fish and Wildlife, Oregon Department of Water Resources, a lot of those folks out there spend time doing a lot of this. So maybe not so much during the flooding, but a lot of folks spend time out there walking around stream beds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Collecting fish samples, doing gauge readings.
Well, Heather started off her presentation just with a simple conversation, right? You realized some lack of training when you first started on this. That's amazing on your part. We thank you for that. It's nice to know that you had all the rescue water before coming into this position and were able to identify that for your crews. That's awesome.
Yeah, I remember just being blown away. I'm like, what? You can walk on the logs in the river with no life jacket on with a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a plan in place? So I think we've been pretty lucky.
Yeah.
And we haven't had some flooding here for a while, but it's very just what do you call that word? It's cycles, so
Yes.
I mean, it's not like it's going away. We're going to have that event like 1996, if some of you guys remember the flooding throughout the state. So we're talking about, we lost major roads over here. We lost Buford Grade. We house down in Naha, house came off the shore bank, went into the river, was floating down the river and hit the bridge down there and absolutely was annihilated. So now, whoa, okay, what did that do to our bridge? So we got
Yeah.
our bridge guys, our engineers, they're down there checking all that next to that really swift moving water. So put a plan in place and to me, at least a PFD. Doesn't mean you're gonna survive, but we're gonna hopefully find your body.
Right.
But
I
if you
remember
don't have a-
watching that same scenario in Yellowstone. What was it, last year or the year before, where they had that massive floodings and it was taking houses off their bases and just running down the river and then running into bridges and annihilating the bridges. So Robert has his hand up again.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, looking back, if I recall correctly, we have a log of all the fatalities in ODOT, unfortunately.
Yes, we do.
But going back, and I can't remember if it was the 30s, 40s, or 50s, but I remember reading one of the fatality logs in there about an employee walking out on logs, like you were talking about, Heather, and wound up, I guess, disappearing between a couple of logs and fatality.
Yeah.
So it was a long time ago, but the hazard's still there. So
I have to leave for a 9 o'clock, but Heather, again, we thank you so very much for doing this. And it is recorded, and I will get the recording over to the Safety Break 2024. So it's no longer a live link, but a recorded link for directing people that way. So
Right.
thank
Well,
you
I appreciate
again.
you guys taking your time out of your day to listen to me blab.
It was awesome.
All right.
I learned
Have a
so
great
much.
day.
Bye now.